is up, my bitches? If you are new here, hello, my name is Brittany, and today's video, guys, we're filming, baby, we're back. Oh, I'm so excited because today's video is going to be a group collaboration with a bunch of my friends here on YouTube. So we are going to be talking about the shade that made me purchase these eyeshadow palettes. So each of these palettes had one specific shade that I'm like,
ooh, I like you. Come to mama.
I feel like everybody's experienced this, and at first I was like, I don't know. If anything, it's like the shade like justifies the palette for me, but going back through and looking through Instagram and stuff, I'm like, oh no, I know for a fact that I've got 10 palettes, and I'm like, oh, I saw these shades, and I'm like, I need to have this palette. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to have a little swatch party. But before we get into the palettes, I want to introduce you to all the beautiful ladies that this is in collaboration with. They are all linked down below. Please go check out their channels, subscribe to them, show them some love, watch their videos. I can't wait to see what everybody talks about because none of us have any idea like what palettes we're all talking about. So Betsy is the person that put us all together. She's like, hey, do you guys want to do this video? And we're all just like, yes, bitch. We love eyeshadow palettes. We're eyeshadow palette junkies. So Betsy, you guys always see her in the live chats all the time. Thank you so much to Betsy for putting this all together. And then we also have Leora. Leora is a relatively new find for me as well. I saw her recently collab with Karen Harris. She's a colorful queen. But speaking of Karen Harris, this is also in collaboration with Karen Harris. You guys have seen her on my channel before. She's my eyeshadow palette queen. Guys, if you ever want to see a good swatch party, go check out Karen's channel. We also have Heather Austin. Heather is just like my Southern belle. I love Heather with my whole entire heart. I love all these ladies. But you guys all know Heather Austin. She's such a gem here on YouTube, so go check her out. And then we also have Katie Marie, which we see her in the live chats as well. She's like my green shadow bridge. I friggin' love Katie. I am just so excited to be collabing with all these ladies because I think they all have such great channels. So again, please go check out their channels. They're all linked in the description box. Subscribe, watch their stuff, all the things. Let them know you're a part of the britches. And now let's dive into the 10 palettes, the shade that made me buy them. Now the first palette that really came to mind for me was the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes. And a fun little spin that I want to put on my video is, was this one shade worth it? Because there's some shades I'm like, yo, I played myself, and then there's other shades that I'm like, I could easily justify keeping this palette, buying this palette again, just for the single shade, and this is one of those palettes for me. The shade Opulence is the most beautiful. It's like a goldish, almost like a coppery gold. It's such a stunning shade. I cannot pull this palette out without swatching this. You guys know if you've been following my channel how much I love and adore this palette. But the shade Opulence is what really made me check for Artist Couture. And I'm like, Artist Couture, can we get more shadows like this in this formula? Because there's some incredible shadows like the Green Supreme down here, the shade Lavish, the shade Bronziana. Like all the metallics in this are so fire. And then the mattes on top of it are phenomenal. But the shade that really sold me this palette was the shade Opulence. I still love and adore it. I swatch that shade every single time I pull the palette out. This is the type of shade it's like, that's what dreams are made of. I would love to see more of this formula from Artist Couture. 100% worth that one shade for this palette. I would gladly spend the whole, what, $40 for this palette. I would spend it over again just to get that shade right there, but that whole entire palette is bomb. And then sticking with some basic ass neutral palettes, this next one is from Nabla. This is the Cutie Platinum. I love this palette, but what really sold me this palette was the shade Gem System. I was debating between all of these cutie palettes. I'm like, which one do I want to get? So as soon as I seen this shade here, I'm like, you know what? I love me a basic ass neutral palette, but this shade here, I just thought it was so different. It's almost like slate gray, but it has a more of like a silver tinge to it, and it's got like a little bit of a grunginess to it. But guys, that's the shade that sold me the palette, like made me buy it. But this is the standout shade. Oh my god, I have to show you guys the shade Luxuriance. This is the best silver in my entire collection. Like, I feel like this is probably the formula that's in like the Scott Barnes palette that was like 120 bucks. Look at that silver. That silver is intense. 100% worth every penny. I think this is $24. This palette was like the gateway into Nabla for me. Now everything that Nabla does, if I see a palette, I'm like, yep, I want it. I just saw that their holiday released. I'm like, oh, bitch. I'm telling you, those metallics in this palette for $24 are incredible. That was 100% worth it with just that single shadow. And then another palette, I'm just like, do I need this? No, but did you see that blue shade in here? Anastasia Beverly Hills Amrezy. The shade Leo. Like, this pink shade's cute. This pink shade's cute. This other pink shade's cute. But do you see that fucking blue? Are you kidding me? It's so incredibly beautiful. It looks so much more, I would say so much more pigmented, like when you apply it on your eye. The swatch is not that impressive, but as soon as I saw that blue shade in there, I'm like, I know for a fact I have everything in here in my collection, but do you see that blue? That was exactly what went through my mind when I bought this palette. And then the fact that it had some pressed glitters in there, I thought it was a really great, like, basic go-to palette. I knew that I didn't need it, but that I needed that blue shade in my life. And I'm like, you know what? Anastasia Beverly Hills kills it with their formula most of the time. So I had no problem spending it. And then Amrezy is queen. If you don't follow her on Instagram, I don't know what you're doing because she's such a vibe. But that blue shade, I'm very happy with the palette itself. That blue shade did not play me. Okay? It didn't play me. I'm so happy about that. And then another palette that came to mind was the Alamar Cosmetics, the Reina del Caribe, the Volume 2. I really love the Volume 1. And then as soon as I saw this palette come out, and then I saw this shade up here, I don't know what it is about. This one's so unique. It's almost like grayish, silvery-ish, taupe-ish, but then it has a little bit of a green to it too. It's so beautiful. Like, guys, if you have not tried Alamar Cosmetics, their metallics are fire. Incredible. So this color story, it doesn't really jump out at me, but I was like, but do you see that shade there? I need that because at the time it was so unique to my collection. I still don't think I have anything in my collection that's similar to this. I think it's such a beautiful shade and it's so unique. This looks hella boring, like when you look at it like this. On the eyeballs, it's just like, she came to slay. That shade there, definitely not sabotage for me. I'm just like, no, I'm glad I have another Alamar palette. And then this next one is the Disney Villains Misunderstood palette. I was gonna buy this anyways because I'm a Disney freak. I mean, have you seen my background? I love me some Disney. But the shade Diablo in this Villains palette, I'm just like, come to mama. This looks so insanely pretty. I'm so into this shade here. And at the time, it was so unique to my collection. It has like a grunginess to it, but it still has that lime green tinge to it. It's just so pretty. Like, who doesn't love a good swatch party, guys? I'm just saying. Oh my god, I just think this is so pretty. This palette, though, for the price point, for the quality of the metallics in here, like, ColourPop, they're very hit or miss for me, but this palette, the metallics alone, I'm just like, yes, bitch. This shade did not play me. I'm so excited to say that. It did not play me. The next palette that came to mind was the Lunar Beauty, the Strawberry Dream palette, and it's this shade right here. This is another one. I'm like, I can't touch this palette without swatching this shade because I feel like even though Lunar Beauty is considered like an indie brand, I feel like Lunar Beauty is very well known. This is going to do that shade no justice whatsoever because it's one of the most beautiful, like incandescent, almost like a duochrome. It's got like a blue to a white to a like a pink shift to it. It's so unique. I just think this shade is so unique to my collection and I was so excited because I was not really checking for Lunar Beauty initially because it was, you know, some stuff was going on with the owner. We already know. And then this palette came out and I'm like, oh, bitch. Am I seeing a duochrome in there? I'm gonna need that because I had been wanting to try his palettes and I'm just like, yeah, that shade, I want it. I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it. And this palette is considered to be one of my favorite palettes in my collection because I think it's so unique. And then too, the formula. Lunar Beauty quickly became one of my favorite brands and then the packaging is just everything. It's so damn cute. But then we have the Melt Cosmetics She's in Parties. And this color story just speaks to my love language anyways. I know it was this shade right here that made me buy this palette because I'm like, oh my god, I love how this looks. It looks just so smooth and buttery, and it looks a lot lighter in pictures. In person, it's definitely deeper than I was expecting. This one kind of played me a little bit, but I still really do like this palette. This shade is really pretty. It's just Melt's formula is so tricky because I feel like with their metallics, they apply very chunky, so it's almost like you have to really smooth over them. But this shade here, even though it looks hella basic and it doesn't look like anything really special, when you look at it, like where I'm looking at it right now, it is a duochrome. Like it has a, almost like a purple to like a golden, almost like a golden brown shift to it. It's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna show up on camera, but it is such a unique shade. But it's not one of my favorite palettes, like color story wise. I think we should have had a little bit more dimension within the darker shades. Like I feel like we probably didn't need all three of these, but I mean, I still like the palette. It's just not a favorite. And for how expensive this is, I'm just like, was this shade worth it? Kind of, because I still really enjoy the palette. But did I need it? Did I need any of these? No. But I would say that's one of the ones that it really played me because that shade does look so different in real life. Another palette that came to mind, this was like one of my first, actually this might have been my first Natasha Denona purchase. This is the Natasha Denona, the Holiday 2 Aries palette. And this freaking blue shade, I walked by this palette so many times. Like, I could still remember when I purchased this. I walked by this damn palette so many times. I picked it up, and at this time you could swatch everything. But that shade, it just kept calling me. I don't even know why. I don't even wear that many blues. And that's 2 palettes. 2 palettes right there that I bought just because of the blues. But I'm like, oh, I need it. Oh, it's Natasha. Oh, that blue shade right there. And I think at the time that was like a $40-something palette for 5 eyeshadows. I'm like, did I need it? Probably not. But now looking back, like, I don't reach for this nearly enough, but I think it's still a really beautiful palette. And this orange in this palette is fucking fire. I love it. Another more recent find for me is Juvia's Place. I had never tried Juvia's Place, and for the quality of their palettes and for the price, it's phenomenal. So I wanted to talk about the Mauves palette. This is a relatively new palette for me, but this shade down here, guys, I saw this in the picture. I think Juvia's Place is one of those brands. It's like, anytime I see their metallics, really any brand for that matter, I see their metallics in pictures and I'm like, oh, fuck me up, it's got metallics. That's what I love. I love metallic eyeshadows, but this one here, I just think it's such a beautiful eyeshadow. The only downfall with Juvia's Place metallics is they get almost like hard pan, kind of. This shade here reminds me a lot of the Barb shade in the Anastasia Beverly Hills Amrezy, but I just, every time I look at this shade, I'm like, this was 100% worth it. I think this shade is just so pretty. Almost like the Lunar Beauty. That was the shade. Did I even tell you what shade it was? I don't think I did. The Lunar Beauty shade was Blue Diamond. These almost give me like similar vibes, except I think that the Lunar Beauty is just a little bit brighter, like more of a white base to it. Whereas the Juvia's Place, I think it has more of a sheer base, but it has that high reflect to it. So beautiful. And then the last palette is probably my favorite palette of 2020, and that's the Tiny Marvels from Sydney Grace. I could say this about like all the shadows in this, like all the metallics. I'm just like, oh bitch, fuck me up. I think a lot of people might be thinking the green shade, but the shade that really sold this palette for me is the shade Scarab up here. I love like duochromes, multichromes. Ah, it's so pretty. Oh my gosh, I can't get over how stunning and smooth that shade is right there. I can't. Sydney Grace, Mel Thompson, you guys murdered it with this palette. I'm telling you, hands down, one of my favorite, if not the best palette of 2020. It's incredible. They are going to have a restock, actually, tomorrow? No, today, as you're watching this video, I think Sydney Grace did restock today. So, guys, run, do not walk for the Sydney Grace eyeshadow palettes, and I think everything restocks, like Enduring Love. I know the Tiny Marvels was the big one, but man, oh man, do I freaking love that Scarab shade. So these are all of the shadows that really sold me the palette. There's so many other palettes in my collection that I love, and I just could swatch all day long, but these are the ones that really came to mind at first. If you guys want to see any other categories like this, let me know. Or if you guys would want to see like a I keep this palette because of this shade, let me know that too. Don't forget to check out all of the channels linked down below, all their videos. I cannot wait to see what everybody talks about. So exciting. I love talking about eyeshadow palettes. They're one of my favorite makeup products. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy. Again, check out the description box, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!